Hey everyone, welcome back. This is episode 6 of CNY Conversations. I am Jason Klink, and today I am here with Nick Johnson. Nick is, we had connected on our Facebook networking group with CNY business persons and entrepreneurs. And, we've been in all kinds of different conversations over the last few months. So I figured, why not have Nick on and continue our conversations for everybody else. But Nick has an interesting story, and that's the main reason why I wanted to have him jump on the podcast. Nick went from being a math teacher to a car salesman to creating his own data analyst and data business, technology business. And I thought it was a super interesting story that is very hyper local to here to Syracuse and Central New York. So Nick, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here.
Now, I didn't want to butcher the name of the business, so I figured I'd let you say the name of your business.
I don't know if I've actually decided if it's Ataviz or Ataviz Consulting.
Oh, all right.
The name came from data visualization, shortened to DataViz. I took the V off the front, so I guess it would be Ataviz, but everybody calls it Ataviz, and I think we might stick with that.
That's what I was going to go with, was Ataviz, but yeah. I wanted to make sure it wasn't Ataviz or something like that. So, so cool. Anyways, so why don't you dive in a little bit how you went from education to sales to starting your own business?
Yeah, so we got to flip the first two. So I went from sales to education.
That's right.
To data analyst. So
yep.
Initially, I went to school. I got a degree in mathematics. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I was good at math. So I focused on that and ended up having an internship to be an actuary. I didn't love the internship. I didn't love being on a computer all the time, which is funny because now I enjoy being on a computer all the time. But that was also 15 years ago, so a little bit younger, a little bit more immature.
Yeah.
So I ended up in sales. I ended up selling cars. Did great business there. I made 6 figures. It was fantastic, but you're working 50 to 60 hour weeks. So I got a bit burnt out. So towards the tail end, when I saw kind of what was coming in the future, I decided to go back to school and get my master's in education. So I was working 50 to 60 hour weeks and going to night class 2 nights a week and getting my master's. So I did that for 2 years, graduated, did my student teaching, and became a high school math teacher. All of a sudden, COVID hits. COVID kind of takes a toll on education, in my opinion. So started looking for, what else I could do, and saw this data analyst career pop up. And I started looking into what a data analyst did. And I noticed that I was doing all these things already just because it made sense. It made my life easier. It made my work more efficient. It made my work better. So I looked into it, and I'd been coding for the majority of my life anyways. I'd been making websites since I was 10 years old, so I understand coding in general, and taught myself a few of the languages that I needed to do this, and started doing some smaller projects. Eventually they got bigger. I started getting more clients, larger contracts, and here I am.
Fantastic. Now, how difficult of a shift or a pivot was to go from being a teacher to starting your own business and learning all the business ends of the business?
That was a huge change, but it's funny how many things that I learned while I was a teacher and before I became a teacher that I use when dealing with clients. The ability to, speak to people, to work, as a group, to kind of bounce ideas off each other, but also to explain really difficult concepts to people who don't necessarily have a tech background. If you can explain the quadratic formula to a 14-year-old, having that ability, it kind of helps to explain, some coding and some in-depth coding or something about this database or the way that this field is statistically relevant. And being able to break that down for somebody who has no idea, what a 5-number summary is a huge skill to have.
Right. Now, fast forward to current times, and tech and data really has come forward with all of the AI that is been introduced to the world, even though it's not. I don't think it's really new or in an infant stage by any means, but ChatGPT kind of took AI and shot it up in a rocket ship. Has that had a large impact on your business?
Well, it's gotten more eyes on the product.
Right.
ChatGPT and making what ChatGPT is called a large language model, an LLM. Those aren't necessarily new, but the fact that it's now this big, this well trained, and this available for public consumption is what's really brought everything to the main stage. So what I see people doing is now they have this interest in this thing that they've heard about, but they don't really A, understand it, or B, realize exactly what went into it and how many hours it took to not just work on the data, but to train the model. I mean, it took a large server about a month of straight training just to train this model. That doesn't include the data that's coming into this. I mean, that took years. So people have this idea now. All of a sudden, they can use ChatGPT to make all these chatbots and answer questions and help with content creation, which is great and it's fantastic. But they don't necessarily understand the limitations, which is what I see a lot of problems with. They don't really know how to use it, and they don't understand what it can and can't do.
That's a good segue. So what do you consider the most common misconceptions of the use of AI and ChatGPT?
So with the biggest misconception is what it's built for. ChatGPT is a chat bot. It's a large language model. What it does is it responds to you in a way that it basically puts words in order that it thinks makes the most sense.
Mm.
What people think ChatGPT is almost like an intelligence bot where everything it spits out is accurate and correct. And it's not. You could ask it a question and it could give you completely false information, but do it in a really convincing way that sounds really good.
You're making me second guess all of the marketing material I've created on.
Yeah.
Because I got to be honest, ChatGPT has become my best friend when it comes to like marketing and creating blog posts and articles and stuff. It saves me a ton of time. It saves me a lot of thought. But I do go through, like, a lot of what I create. I go through and check for accuracy and make sure that it's more to my thought process and my experience and my knowledge versus just taking it for granted.
Right, exactly. And one of the small exercises that I'll give people that are interested on this, that I'm kind of, showing how to use it, is to ask ChatGPT to give you a description of a product by a real company, but I want you to make up the product name so that it doesn't exist. So, the face shaver 1000 by Bic, right? Bic's a real company. I'm assuming they don't have a product called that. But if you ask ChatGPT to give you a product description of it, it will give you a product description as if that product existed. And it doesn't, because it's literally making it up. Because its job is to put words in order and make the most sense that it's trained to do. And whether it's true or not is irrelevant.
So, in your experience and with your knowledge, where do you see this going as far as if it's not let me try that again, Chat GPT, or, maybe it's a different, platform. Do these platforms start getting smarter? Do they start becoming more accurate in what they're doing, and I'm confident that the tech companies are going to monetize a lot of this, but, do you see that going in that route where you have these intelligent, chatbots, as you said, to be able to interact with on a regular basis?
Absolutely. So it's already started.
Okay.
They're on ChatGPT 4 right now. So there's already been several versions of it before what they have right now. And they already offer, they've been offering an API that allows you to use it on the back end and kind of train it and give it a specific genre to talk about and, kind of give it specific things to respond with. So it's already in use. It's already being monetized. It's already in use by large companies in terms of using it as a chatbot, using it as a code debugger, all kinds of things that this has capability of doing.
I just went down I went down a Chat GPT rabbit hole today because I was trying to come up with some different marketing material for my real estate business and a good ad copy. Because I was trying to put together a real estate ad that would generate leads. And so I went down the rabbit hole, went to YouTube University, started doing some research, but what it does is a lot of what you find online, at least what I find online, is you start going down the path, but then you start heading towards platforms that you have to invest in. And that's where a lot of, I think people have figured out how to monetize, the usage of AI and chat GPT to their own benefit. But it looks like many other platforms have spawned from this, to be able to monetize on that technology.
Absolutely. There's an AI bot or some sort of LLM that is based on ChatGPT that does specifics for every part of marketing and content creation at this point. And of course, everybody's well aware it's gone into images.
Yeah.
It's going to come into sound and video. And they'll be able to, be able to create video content by just typing in a prompt.
I'm so like in tune with this, and like I said, I've gone way down this rabbit hole. But there was a pharmaceutical commercial I saw the other day, and they had people in it. But I'm looking at this and said to my wife, I'm like, I swear to God, that thing's AI generated, because that face just does not look real. It
Right.
looks real, but it doesn't look real.
Right. And I know there's been commercials that have been AI generated that are playing right now. They're on television, they're on the web. It's definitely out there. It's not super prevalent quite yet, but it's getting there.
For the people of the world, they're like, oh, this is Terminator stuff. This is start of robots taking over, technology taking over. Do you see any validity in that?
No, there's no way for these models to become self-sentient, but can you have a model that continuously learns and continuously figures out, right and wrong, not in the sense of real right and wrong, but what the model's trained to do versus what it's not trained to do. Yeah, continuous learning is very much a thing in machine learning and artificial intelligence. So that's existed for a long time. What hasn't existed is something this large that can do so much. That's
Right.
what's new and that's what's novel about ChatGPT. And the fact that it's available for public consumption, it can do so many things. But the time savings that it provides everybody, even if you use just the free version, for people like us who are doing it on a very small scale and using it for just content creation, things like that, the time savings is huge.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, it just, the stuff I'm able to accomplish during the day that would have taken me hours and hours and hours of research and checking resources and I would have gave up a long time ago.
Right. Yeah.
It's just absolutely amazing. Do you think that it almost seemed like the Googles and the Microsofts of the world almost were caught off guard with Chat GPT, and were coming from behind just to create something of their own?
Yeah, I mean, Meta's certainly, come out with their version of ChatGPT. There's it's certainly a thing. They're all kind of working on them at the same time. OpenAI kind of started the whole thing with the ChatGPT, but everybody's right on their tails. Google has their own, Meta has their own.
Mhm.
It's certainly becoming a thing now where everybody's using it, but it's these large, huge tech companies that are doing this.
Right, right. How does if you are working with a local business, and how do you best educate a client or a business on infusing data analytics or AI or all of the above into their business to make it more efficient?
That's the big thing, and it really does come down to education. So many people aren't aware of what data analytics is or what it can do for them when it comes to being an entrepreneur, being a small business, or even being a larger business. So they see the Chat GPT and it gets them thinking about what can I do with this. But really, most companies, most people have to start out a lot smaller than that and
Mhm.
just start doing very basic data analytics and things like customer segmentation, just working with their product, working with inventory, looking at sales numbers, looking at sales projections, looking at A/B testing their website to figure out what website's working best for their client. That's where everybody needs to start. ChatGPT is super usable for somebody smaller, and it can be done. But chatbots aren't really what's going to help the bottom line right off the bat. The more basic data analytics, that's what's going to have more of an impact off the bat. ChatGPT is cool. It looks fun. It's the fun thing to play with, But in terms of bottom line, I've got to kind of steer people towards, what's really going to affect that dollar right now for them.
Yeah, and you and I have had a couple of conversations, and I actually was just having a conversation today with a non-for-profit that supports public safety and the fire service, and that's the first 2/3 of my life.
Right.
And we were talking about how this type of technology, data analytics, using data, even AI, is a game changer for that industry, if at least in my opinion, because it gives them the ability to better manage their operations. And in a time where there's a staffing crisis, when there's budget crunches, having this kind of data where they didn't typically have data before, to me is such a game changer. But it's changing a lot of mindsets. It's changing, hundreds and hundreds of years of traditions that it was just go to work, do the work, especially in that industry.
Right.
How do you feel is the best way to like introduce this kind of technology into any industry, in order to kind of improve their operations?
I think what it comes down to is not fitting ChatGPT into the operations. It's figuring out what tools actually going to fit the business problem that people have.
Mm-hmm.
So many people want to use it because it's what people are talking about. They see that it can help them save time with certain things,
Right.
but they immediately start with, how can I use this tool versus what's the issue that I'm really having? What's the business problem that I'm facing, and what answers do I need? And then what tool is going to help me best answer those questions? So it's really starting out and backing up and saying, okay, that tool's cool. It's fine. It does a lot, but where are we starting? What do we actually need for the business right now? And let's start there. And let's start figuring out how we can solve that problem. And if we can include ChatGPT or whatever else, some sort of AI into that solution, great. But 9 times out of 10, it doesn't even need to be in that solution. It's something else that's needed.
Yeah, it's always, especially in the tech world, and I've learned this over the last few years, is applying the solution to the pain point. I was just thinking too while you were talking how, you know, I criticize. So I'm a huge New York Yankees fan, and Major League Baseball and a lot of the other sports have dove into data analytics.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Big ball.
and a year or two ago, I started really criticizing how they were managing the game based on data analytics.
Mhm.
And even like Alex Rodriguez in one of the Fox shows of Major League Baseball was criticizing the Yankees management for the Ivy League graduates that were working for the team to infuse data analytics into the game, in order to get an edge up. But now I sit here and as much as I've dove down the rabbit hole, I can see how it's just a way to get in an advantage and make things more efficient.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing, a few years ago, this was something that only large companies could afford to do. But now that it's becoming more prevalent and there's companies out there, there's not many companies that are as small as mine that will work with a very small business on a very limited budget. But the fact that this is now available for small businesses and entrepreneurs to use, whereas before you had to go to these super large boutique data companies.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have somebody like Ataviz Consulting that you can come to and just get your data pipeline started, because a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs don't have one at all. They're not using data, period. You're either going off of gut feeling, they're going off of how, sure, they might be looking at numbers and, trying to read things and make decisions, but they're not using analytics to actually get insights into what the data is actually saying. They're just looking at it surface view and saying, oh, it looks like this, I'm going to go with this.
What's your elevator pitch to when you're making introductions to some of these small businesses, just to try to, well, for better terms, get them on the hook to invest in your services? But what's your elevator pitch to try to bring these small businesses in to show them the value of using data analytics and AI?
It's really sitting down and figuring out what metrics they're using right now, if any, to make decisions about their business. What are they looking at? Do you have any KPIs developed? Are you looking at any KPIs, any metrics to decide if your business is going well or not? How do you decide if your business is doing well? And just going from there. And because once you start there, then you can really start delving into, okay, what's important to this business? And then we can start looking at, okay, what data do we need to figure out that question? And then start taking that data, making visualizations, looking at things and saying, okay, now I can actually monitor these KPIs on a regular basis. I could send it down to all of my managers and they can keep an eye on it on a daily basis. I can send this version of it down to salespeople so they can see how things are trending any given month. And it's just kind of breaking it up into that. And doing something like that doesn't take a whole lot of time for somebody like me who's an expert in data analytics. So you can bring me in, get that done, and it's automated. Once I do it, I set it and you can forget it. It's just sent to you however you want. And you just look at it. And then you have all these extra insights to be able to make these big decisions about your business and to monitor how your business is doing.
Do you find that there's more pushback than acceptance right now to go down that road?
I don't think there's pushback. I think there's uncertainty.
Oh, okay.
It's very hard to, I think nobody really disagrees with, the things that I say when I'm giving, some sort of pitch to somebody. Nobody says, oh no, I don't agree with that. It's more, I don't know what to do with it, or I don't know what it looks like. And that's the hard part of kind of selling what I offer, because it's hard for me to show what I can offer. I can show you all the pretty charts and visualizations that I make, and they're all plastered all over my website. I just won an award from the city of Syracuse for a visualization that I built for city data. So I can certainly show you the visualizations, but it's hard for people to say, okay, how is that going to help me in particular? And it's getting over that hump normally, which is the biggest hurdle in gaining more clients.
So, yeah, I just had a thought that went right out of my head, but that's what I was going to say. So, my main job is working for a public safety SaaS company, and I've worked for a couple. And there's such a distinct difference because one that I worked for, we had all kinds of usage data for our platforms. So we're able to stay in complete contact with our client base, our customers, our agencies. When there was a sudden drop off in usage, we could get a hold of them and say, hey, what happened? Did you have a technology issue on your end, or is it on our end? Versus a company I've worked for that had none of that. And you couldn't have those logical conversations with them because you're relying on the customer to tell you if they're using your product or your platform or not. So there's such a huge advantage to having the data versus not.
Yeah, it opens up so many conversations. And you can just dive even far. Okay, so this number looks like this, or these numbers have changed drastically from last week. Now we can delve into why and get the real reason that these things are happening. Whereas those conversations without data typically don't happen at all until sometimes it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're losing business, or worse, you're going out of business.
Right.
Have you seen a lot of, or how do you respond to people like, well, that's gotta be way too expensive. I can't afford that.
Well, that's the thing. And that's why I market my business to, smaller business and entrepreneurs, because I charge a lot less because I do the full spectrum. I do everything from pipeline, ETL, getting the data, all the way to the final product. So I'm not having to go out and hire other consultants to do that work. So because I'm doing it in-house, A to Z, I can do it much quicker. I'm not paying somebody else. There's no middleman. There's no markup in that sense. It's just me doing it and what I charge. And a lot of times what I focus on is using the free tools that are out there, because there are so many free tools that are out there. A lot of people think they have to invest in some, expensive software to do these analytics. And I can do it in, depending on the size of your data, Excel, which, either free. I mean, if you can use Google Sheets, which is free, or Microsoft Office, which almost everybody has.
Right.
If it's a larger data set, I can do it in Python, which is completely free. And I do it on my end, and then I produce whatever needs to be produced, and then I send it right over to you in some report that says, okay, here are the answers to your questions. Here's what it looks like. Where do we go from here? Tableau Public is a free version of a data visualization software. That's what I have all of my data that's available on my website, all the visualizations that are there, the visualizations on the City of Syracuse website. It's all built in Tableau Public. That's free. So, you don't need some giant, expensive software to do this. You can do it all, and you're just paying somebody to do it for you. The software itself is nothing.
Now, what about security concerns? The politicians have blown up the internet with TikToks. The Chinese are stealing our data, and I've had conversations with family and friends saying the Chinese have been stealing our data for decades. This is not anything new.
Yeah.
How do you quell those security concerns?
It's knowing what platforms you're using and keeping the data in a secure place. So if my clients have customer data, they're not just going to have it in a spreadsheet. It's going to be through some sort of either POS software,
Hmm.
or Salesforce or some sort of CRM. So it's already secure in that sense. It's just getting the data over to me, and me doing something with it and doing it securely on my end, and just making sure that that data transfer is secured and encrypted. So there's different ways to do it depending on where the data is coming from exactly. Normally, like I said, it's not some spreadsheet that just has, customer names and phone numbers.
Yeah,
Especially if it's like payment information, you've got credit card numbers, things like that. That's all very much encrypted based on whatever POS or, Square, or whatever service you're using to collect payment.
right.
So it's just figuring out how to get the data out of that. What's the pipeline going to look like into whatever I need to make whatever they need. Is the visualizations that we're after? Is it machine learning? Is it predictive analytics? And then going from there.
Yeah, because in my industry or where I work, that's always a concern. There's government compliance requirements and all of that. So
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
always one of the bigger question is is our data, especially when we're working with law enforcement or those type of agencies that that they have to be very concerned about how secure their data is.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've worked for some very large national companies that deal with federal healthcare data.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's do you want to talk about secure? I mean, you're add
Yeah.
HIPAA into that as well. So, there's a lot of issues with dealing with healthcare data, and I'll be on encrypted server after encrypted server. I'll have a list of encryption keys I have to use just to get into data. Yeah, so the more with big data you get, you've got to be very careful about how you're using it and who has access to it.
Awesome. So what big things are on the horizon for you? Where's Ataviz Consulting going from here?
We're just looking to grow, gain more clients. I'm in this weird stage where I've got some smaller clients and I have some very large contracted clients that I work with, some large corporations where I'm just some random contractor to them. But then I also work with smaller businesses and I'm doing some very cool things for them. I think one of the coolest projects I'm currently working on is actually a personal project of mine that I'm hoping to use for a client. I'm actually working on a predictive model using a couple million rows of football data,
Wow.
where it's going to be able to predict any given player's weekly fantasy football points, uh, which has taken me a very long time to do because there is a ton of data to go through. But I'm
Oh,
hoping
sure.
throughout this football season to get it to a point where it's viable, and I can actually produce it to a client of mine, and they can use it on their site.
That's amazing. And that almost falls back into the sports teams using that just to be able to get that edge for games week to week. They got to be analyzing that kind of data week to week.
Oh, absolutely. All these sport teams and these sport leagues have, several statisticians and guys in the background doing the sort of data analytics for them. Absolutely. I'm just doing it on a small scale using, what's available to me publicly.
Yeah.
And my goal is to hopefully be able to beat, the ESPN predictions.
Wow. That I'm very interested to see how that turns out because
Yep.
I've done fantasy football in the past and it was it was either going on and looking at ESPN's fantasy picks and trying to make your best guess to that that'll change that fun little game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how many times are you basing your lineup on, their projections, and their projections are way off? My goal is to take it and minimize that error and be able to hopefully predict a lot better, who's going to have the up or down week.
That's phenomenal. People are gonna have a lot of fun with that.
Absolutely. It's those fun projects that keep me going. I mean, it's
Yeah,
great to, work with, these large contractors and things. That's fine. But, you get me working with some sports data and that's where it is.
Yeah, for sure. Especially for anybody that's a sports nut, that we'd all eat that up.
That's the thing, and sports nut or not, I mean, how many people play fantasy football?
Right.
I
Right.
mean, whether they're even into it or not. So, being and how many people are willing to pay to help them do things a lot faster
Right.
and give you that deep dive into analytics. So that's a huge thing.
That's awesome. I love it. That's great. Well, Nick, I appreciate you jumping on here today and doing this podcast episode. The information is so valuable. If people wanted to connect with you, how do they do that?
Absolutely. So my company is all over all the socials at Ataviz Consulting. You can reach my website, atavizconsulting.com. And I'm personally on Facebook at Nick at Ataviz as one of your moderators for the CNY Business Professionals group there. So
Yep.
any of the above, all the socials are open.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to me if for some reason you can't find Nick online. I'd be happy to connect you. As always, I'm trying to build a community here with this podcast and make it a local community for Syracuse and Central New York. Give us all a voice where we may not have had it to be able to get a message out about our business or about our activity or non-for-profit. So please, drop a comment on this video if you're watching the video, or if you listen to the audio, make sure you like it and share it with everyone that you might feel will get any value out of it. Let me know what you think of this episode and what you would want to see in future episodes. And as Nick develops his fantasy football technology, maybe we'll have him come back on and and promote that in the future as we get closer to the NFL season in the fall.
Absolutely.
So once again, Nick, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. Everyone, please connect with us. And until next time, this is episode 6 of CNY Conversations. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Have a great day.